Welcome to IbGib. I'm Bill Rayford, and we've got a couple interesting updates today to show you. Um, One is the dynamic theming that you are going to be start to see, uh, I guess, on other websites, but right now you can see it on IbGib. This takes the concept of light and dark themes and blows that out of the water, and takes it more to a if you're used to VS Code being able to really theme all the different colors and that sort of thing for the different pieces. Not nearly as elaborate as that, not nearly as complicated, but the important thing is that you can use an agent, talking to an agent, to set your theme. And you can have multiple themes, and you can easily just tell the agent, hey, give me this other theme. In addition to the theming, I finally have working the project. I'm calling it project. These are really just IbGibs in general, but since none of you know what the hell an IbGib is, that's kind of a worthless word. It's a purposeful neologism, right? But so we have the concept of these projects, and a project is just like you normally think of a project is in other software IDEs, that sort of thing. But what inevitably happens with a project is you have some project, you have some piece of that project, that piece becomes too complicated, and now really that piece is another project. And so part of IbGib's power, the protocol, the power is that you start to have this one workflow, this one what I call a supersymmetrical data construct to represent stuff. So it's sort of like a thing, right? An IbGib is like a thing. It has intrinsic data, it has extrinsic data, but in our case, we also have a bunch of this cryptographic DLT style architecture built on top of it, or built with it. So, but now finally with the website, you can start to actually use this. So we have projects, we have the ability to fiddle with projects, we can save them. It's very limited, very early. I'm very old, and I program very slowly nowadays, which is why I need more help from younger people. But the point of it here is that we're able to take that project workflow, use this super symmetrical, semi-structured IbGib record that ends up building a DLT, a Merkle DAG, or a Merkle forest, if you want to think of it that way. And so we get to play around with just the beginnings of that. I had to build a custom architecture for the component system and all this other stuff. So, and then after that, we will talk about more distal things. So that's sort of the proximal section. My weird locution, proximal and distal are very, very big concepts. So the more distal, the more long-term discussions, as well as some meta discussions, like with the people who didn't like my microphone for the last video. When you have a zero or a negative budget, a $5 microphone ends up being a big roadblock. But I found an old microphone that we were loaning out, because distributed collaboration, loaning, and being a good neighbor is part of distributed computation. Talking about, if you like Douglas Adams, we're talking about the biological distributed computer architecture. But so we'll talk about that sort of meta stuff later. So for now, let's check out some of the neat, shiny, cool little things. And we'll start off with the new theming, which is, it's just so neat. It's a silly little thing, but I love playing with it. So that said, let's see if I can switch this over because I'm not a YouTuber. Ooh, nice dissolve. I guess I still have that duration, yeah, set to 12 seconds. Okay, so I'm here. I'm at ibgib.com. This is where you type it in, ibgib.com. Your first visit. Oh, that was one thing. We need to go through a requirement. One thing you need is a Gemini API key. You can find this if you go to aistudio.google.com, and we'll see what I have here. Well, it doesn't show anything over there, but so up here you can say get API key, right? So you click on that, you copy the thing. I don't know what it's gonna, I can always cut it out. What the hell? We'll say this. Okay, now you know that I have some API keys that end in these things here. So, but you go in and you click on this thing, and you say copy that. And this application is only local. There's nothing here that's going to phone home. There's no connectivity. There's no back end. This is what some people call a local first architecture. I called it occasionally connected. But the point is that this works locally and doesn't go in phone home. So, but you do need your own key because it takes quite a bit of overhead to make sure, for one thing, that you have rate limiting and that sort of thing implemented. The other thing is that it takes some extra architecture for me to implement the synchronization and the connectivity between remotes, between nodes is what people think of it as. So right now it's bring your own key. Okay, and it only works for Gemini right now because I only have time for one adapter. It is designed, it is coded architecturally. I have it written to where we can add new substrates as long as there's a function calling API. But right now it's only Gemini. So with that requirement out of the way, let's just look at this screen. So here's the screen, here's our main center panel, here's our left panel, here's our right panel, here's down here. We have a couple colors. See how this color, this is like a blue color, powder blue, and this is also powder blue down here. And we're going to see why that is here more with the projects, but for right now, just notice that. It says this is a Web 1 context, it's early dev. This is pre-alpha, right? But the point is that you can, as it says here in the placeholder, you can chat with a primary agent here. So you can ask it questions. I'll make a video one of these days of talking about the IbGib protocol itself with the agent as sort of a dynamic rubber duck. But for now, we'll just say, first we'll say hello. I mean, this one already knows who I am. And so we can actually maximize this right panel here. It seems I've been reinitialized. Would you like to reload the ocean scene? So, so that's natural language. We're not just saying, give me a dark theme. So I just said a dark, you got to see it. A dark theme, neon reds and blues, oranges and purples. Right? So as you notice, the scroll bar here is orange. He's changing the right panel. So this is a human message. This is a robot, AI message or agent. We have over here, right? We have these, and it's like, okay, calls it the neon dark theme. Okay. All right. So this projects tab is inactive up here. So he should dim that to where it's more obvious that that's not the active project. So here, that's the active project. That's the active project. That's all right. But look at these links. So these links, it's like the hovering is blue now. No, I think that's what it defaults to. Just recently, I've been having a little bit of issues with the model being a little slow because they're saying that the main model that this has, this is using the Gemini 2.0 Flash, and it's saying it's overloaded, and I'm having it. It has a backup. It defaults to another one. Well, I guess we can go ahead and so here there's no errors. So it's not doing that at the moment. It's just a little slow. It could be my computer also. It's not a workhorse. So there we go. So these are already visited links. This blog is an unvisited one. We'll go to contact here. How about that? Go to contact. Still thinks it's unvisited. Web one stuff. But so this is all with the a blend of just plain vanilla JavaScript / TypeScript, really. But also I had to build my own component architecture that uses the IbGib stuff, but that gets down in the weeds. For right now, let's just look at the theming stuff and say, oh, okay, well, what about the side panel backgrounds? It's boring, but what? Eh. And so it's got the hover ones. And so, but notice it here at the bottom, this is still a blue, powder blue. That's because our context is this web one. So this is not just a regular chat. This is actually an IbGib context, and this input is corresponding to this context. And we'll see more of that when we talk about projects. But so I just wanted to show you the theming, which is so cool. So, hey, that's great. Neon dark, it is. Let's switch to the ocean blue that the AI and I did earlier. Let's switch to the ocean blue to compare. And so the agent with natural language is thinking of this, and it's calling this update CSS variables in the background. So here's the more ocean blue setting with sort of this seafoam green in the background and a little bit less difference between the visited and unvisited links. Okay, so that is the website, what I call the primary agent. That was the first agent, and really it's really the website agent. But now we want to talk about the projects. That's really, I mean, this is really cool just knowing that websites are going to start having this to where you don't just have a dark light theme, You have, well, you can sort of think of it as a dynamic UI. And we'll talk about that later in the distal discussion. Right now, we're in the proximal discussion, right? We're talking about the near-term cool stuff that this video is about. So with that in mind, let's go over to the projects. And so now, let's just real quick go to about projects, right? So, oh, we have a little fuzzy, blurry thing here. What are these things? Create chunk canooch projects. By canooch is chunk backwards. So when you chunk something into a part, into a chunk, and then when you merge it back, it's not just merging. And merge is an overloaded term. So I came up with canooch because it's fun. Projects by treating chats like repos. The key differentiator with IbGib is thinking of time at a very low level with your data. That's why most of the time I think that I describe it to people as like Git, but at a low integration for any semantic piece of data. So you can think of a file in a folder as being that was like our early framing of data. You know, people was this very abstract thing. People didn't know what the hell a computer was. They didn't know what bits were. I'm not even sure if Shannon Information had started thinking of information in terms of entropy yet. I don't know the timeline there, probably. But so we've been thinking about files and folders. Files have intrinsic data. Folders are extrinsic. They're groupings of other objects. But really, they're both, right? You have metadata that's on folders. You have metadata that's on files. I'm not sure at a low level if they are the same thing at the very lowest level of operating systems. But in IbGib, each thing is not just a file or a folder. That was a framework put on top of data so that we know what we're doing. But it doesn't incorporate time. And IbGib is like thinking of files and folders as the same thing. Each thing has intrinsic data and extrinsic data. And so with that, in thinking of time, you can think of everything in terms of a chat. So the TLDR here says, when you create a new project, you're actually forking the data in your brain, right? This idea you have in your mind. And we can think of that as your brain being a space of data. And what we're doing is we're forking your brain space into this other thing. So this is like sort of a category theory where you take a set and you're creating a projection of that set. And really what we're trying to do is create either at least an isomorphic or not really a homomorphic, but an isomorphic projection of one set from your brain space into the digital space or into cyberspace. But you think of each chat item with respect to time, and so each individual file, you can think of these comments like right here. This thing is actually, this whole item is actually like a file. It's an IbGib. It's a data record, and it has time associated with it. And so you can think of Web 1, this being our context, all of these as one thing that changes over time. And you can think of each constituent piece as one thing that changes over time. And so all of these things ends up being a chat over time. So a project, you can think of a project as a chat. So when you work on a house, you have your house is the context. And then going forward, say you have multiple service people. Maybe you have electricians and plumbers, right? You have two service people. And so now you have these two timelines that are subchats. They're in a hierarchical relationship with the house chat. And so you're talking with a contractor, maybe the contractor is talking with his subcontractors. Each of these is a reductive process of a chat. And so you can model all of this in a Git-like version control-like protocol. So the main thing is TLDR, everything is a chat. This thing over here, you see I have these 3 items. This is my poor man's Explorer. I haven't implemented the Explorer component yet. But this over here, these are chronologies. I call them chats, but this web 1, well, let's look at a project to understand that more easily. And then we have some of this other stuff but the main thing is thinking of everything as a chat, and that really integrating time and space, time and your data together as one thing, it ends up being a space-time protocol. And yes, I've been using space-time protocol for many, many years now, but this is genuinely a space-time protocol. So let's go over here and say new project. So it says no project loaded, try creating one. So we'll hit this little plus button up here. Now, immediately look at the color. So the color just changed to this, I don't know what you'd call this, like a army green, maybe. And we added a new chat window over here that's also army green. The scroll bar, I think, is driven by the theme. And then down here, if we hover over this is going to be army green also, down here in the bottom right. You can see that. So the first thing to notice is that coloring. And so that means that this untitled AGH, which if we go up here, we'll see untitled AGH. If we go to switch to the text view, right? Here's the name. I don't know if it's a theming thing. You can't see name and description, or if that's just how it's, I don't know. How did I make that thing? So this thing that we're looking at, here's the raw view of this IbGib record. This project that we just created has a color associated to it. That color, this gets into the weeds, but that color is associated to this project's, we'll say this project's timeline, okay? So it's just like a deterministic, like the timeline is represented by a hash, a little bit more than just a hash, but basically a hash, a content database address. And the color is derived from the hash part of that address, right? So this is a unique color. I think it's actually the first. So it's actually this. Oh, did I do one too many? The first 6, yeah. I think the color is actually, hash 41625A, right? So there's some collisions. But the point is that we have these different pieces that are all views into the same data. That is the important part. Everything is an IbGib. An IbGib is this record. It's related to other IbGibs. Like this is this same, hello. This is the past of the current of our project. That's the first one. Oh, it's interesting that the TJP is the second one. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, so all of these things are IbGibs. Even these DNA are IbGibs. They're shorter addresses. We'll get into that some other time. Ancestor, right? So this is what's called a hypergraph. This is a graph structure with Merkle links. It's not just a hash. It's a cryptographic link that includes metadata. Unique, innovative. Um, and so each one of these IbGibs is a single snapshot of a record, just like this one. Some of them form the timeline. So this passed, right? This is the timeline of this IbGib. So this chat on the right is a view of this project. It's a specific view that looks at specific relation names. So here, let's say hi. Hello there. Okay, now the color here, since it's green, we know that we're talking to this context. Oh, and so we have Isabel. Isabel, she just gave herself that name. So in the background, she called Hello World, which helps identify her as an agent. So now this agent, which is an IbGib timeline, by the way, she's telling us that she's a project agent. She can help us manage to deal with this project. So I'm just filling in something here, right? So we have these things, and you think, oh, this is a chat, right? This is our chat. What the hell am I doing with this web app? This is nothing new. No. If you notice, our past, it used to just have 2 items. Now it has 6, right? And it has these comments. These comments, as you can see from the metadata of the Merkle links, which is very useful for human reading content addresses. Hello there, I'm Isabel. I know about the website. And then sounds good. What would blah, blah, blah. So hello there. That corresponds to this first message. Hello there, I'm Isabel. That's the second message. You see, each one of these took the latest, basically it's like the head of the timeline, sort of like the head of a repo, because our project acts similar to a repo. It takes this, it gets the latest one, and then it links this other IbGib. So this comment, we'll get one later to where I can just do an arbitrary IbGib Explorer. I've done that on other prototypes. But so, excuse me. Each one of these things is the same semi-structure. So it's not just a chat where you're adding text. Okay? This is a timeline. Each one of these is an IbGib itself, and each one of these could be turned into a project. Remember at the beginning I was saying a project, what happens is that you have a piece of it that becomes its own project. It becomes so important that really you're no longer talking about a piece underneath another project. You're talking about a separate thing. And that's what this allows us to do. We can take a project and we can break it down into sub-projects. Each project, each IbGib actually gets its own agent. I mean, not proactively. These comments don't get their agents created. But let's say we go over here. There's one other thing that we can do right now. Text. We'll go over plus. So here, cancel this. I don't have that. Woo, demo. Just testing. You can't see it because of the text, but right. I just wanted to say that the plus sign is below this one. This was for creating the project itself. This is for creating a child IbGib. So we just created this thing, this just testing. If we look at it the raw, this is what I'm calling a lens bar. And if we look at the raw data for this just testing, it is a comment IbGib, and it's got some metadata there. But as you see, it also has the DNA. These are just briefly, DNA is kind of similar to event sourcing, the event sourcing paradigm. These are kind of like the events, right? But that's a whole other thing, talking about replayability, rehydration, and event sourcing versus how they're more used here, which is more of like a CRDT or more like a diff in Git. Even though Git doesn't store diffs, neither do we. We do not store diffs. These are actually memoized arguments for transforms. But we'll talk about it another time. The main thing is with project, we just created a child comment. Now, let's get back to interesting, cool things. So I know some German, not fluent in anything, very frustrating. And that was actually the birth, probably, of the IbGib, was long ago when SuperMemo, in SuperMemo's early days of space repetition and that sort of thing, forgetting curves. But so, what is the interesting thing here? The interesting thing here is that we can talk to Isabel about our project and about this child IbGib. This child IbGib actually has its own agent also, but I haven't hooked up delegation yet. But so I just asked Isabel if she can update, because right now I'm not sure if she knows that we've done something to change the project. So she says, oh, I see the just testing text. It's in the text relations. That's the text relation. Comment just testing. Great. Can you tell me the text of the just testing IbGib? I don't know if, is that clear enough for her? So that's a hallucination. You always got to test them. So this is still early days, and she's doubling down, huh? What is the address for the just testing IbGib? Oh no, she doesn't know to set get latest to true. Okay, get that IbGib and remember to set get latest to true. So even in the open API schema that I told them I describe what get latest is for, it's still a little nuanced for the LLMs backing this. Okay, great. Can you tell me the raw record? Now, the reason there's a slight delay sometimes is that the way the pub sub works behind the scenes. And see, there we go. So now she sees that text is this stuff. I wonder if she is going to say something at the end. That's it. So what is the data.text? Come on, lady. Okay, so now we know that because we're teaching her how to use this system, right? In our chat, which again, this chat is a view of this project, right? It's kind of like this project is the Redux or NG store, only this really cool DLT version of an NG store. So like it's the Redux, but with a hash sized space, addressable space, right? So we're talking about distributed computation, not just a Redux for your local website. But so we're teaching her how to use it. And so the interesting thing about that is that right now, what Isabel is seeing is not what we're seeing. This is our chat. This is our dumbed down view, right? Very highly filtered view. But Isabel has her own sort of perspective, her own experience. Every time she makes a function call, these sorts of things get put into her context window, and it's very interesting. And so what we're doing is we're setting it up to where since she is an IbGib, just like these, look at these. You see these DNAs right here? That word right there, fork. And so each of these IbGibs, we're talking about timelines. Timelines are our first-class citizen. It's not an object. In most object-oriented programming languages, it would be an object somewhere, like C# at the very bottom has an object, right? Everything descends from object. It's not a function. It's this new thing because we're incorporating time into it. Our first-class citizen is a timeline, a space-time. So with Isabel and with agents, we're creating a system to where we can fork the agents themselves, and just like we are forking our data. And so again, this super symmetric structure where we're able to treat the data, derivative data, and metadata all with the same fundamental first-class citizen of this timeline. So you've seen a couple of the mechanics of what we're doing here. We'll just switch over here to instead of the Koine Greek, well, I'll let it finish loading. Because right now, this early in alpha, you want to let things finish. Although I do have locking implemented for timelines. Not necessarily transactionality, but I have locking in place, which is a very neat mechanism behind the scenes. Because it dog foods IbGib itself, which was really cool. But so here is what I used to plan for this video. So here's a video list that's not populated yet. But so if we go up here to the top, so here's my discussion. Notice the colors here, right? So now we open to Koine Greek. Here's what we were just talking about with Isabel. But right now, in this YouTube content timeline chronology, this is so right now, look at the colors. Look, the input's yellow. Our border here is this yellow. Same thing with this YouTube content. So this timeline's color is yellow. That's how we know how we're coordinating here with our different pieces. So, but this is me talking to another agent. And I was just sort of like, with Canvas, I was talking to him and he was making most of the edits to this document. But this is an arbitrary document. And the point is that IbGib enables you to have these contexts and the things that you put in the context be the same thing. And so it enables this recursive structure, this composite pattern, to where it reduces the overall long-term amount of code that you have to maintain. And so it's this new collaboration paradigm like Git. The best thing about Git was that it made it to where you could have public and private spaces interact with each other. And you could have distributed computation interact with each other. That's why it is the most successful software ever, right? It is so big now, you don't even think about not using Git. If you're using something else, then you're costing your company money. But right now with agents, there's some technical debt it's associated with that. You can go to the Web 1 stuff and you can look and see a little bit of what I talk about with Git, but that's for a whole nother video. The main thing is what I'm trying to say is that I use this to have the agent do a lot of these bullets. Like I would never do a 3-spaced, look at that, 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. Oh gosh, that's too much for me. 2 is enough. And I'm used to Vim. I need to put Vim bindings in here, and I haven't. So there's so many things to do. Hey, if you want to code on something cool, code on this. Help me out. Of course, the catch is we have to dog food our own version control. We're very, very close. I have already some mechanics for a Git proper replacement that would subsume it. But anyway, that's a digression. You should contact me if any of this sounds interesting. So these requirements and this video outline. So here's our intro, proximal section. I thought about using different words, but that's my weird, way of thinking. Here's the theming demo. Here's the project demo. Here's some of the warts. There we go. Not all the components, it's pre-alpha, right? So not all the components always update, although the IbGib thing makes a very interesting pub-sub mechanism, right? Because you have a unique timeline, so that acts as your pub-sub channel, and so you can subscribe to timeline updates, and so you get this natural way of subscribing to events. You just got to be careful with any kind of optimistic writes on timelines. But the CRDT aspect of the DNA gives us this really cool way of doing merge conflicts and divergent timeline resolutions. So I digress. It's very neat. Oh, and sometimes, like a couple times, the agent just completely replaced it. And so what I had to do was I had to say, well, what's the past address? And then if I had to, I just went over here to the YouTube content. I go into the raw view, and I go and I copy paste, if it was 2, well, I've done quite a few comments on this. If it was 2 or 3 back, I'd copy this one. I'd say, get this one and make sure you say get latest is false. So I'm not expecting users to really do this, right? I'm not expecting users to be this pro, knowing the internals this much. But what I am doing is showing you what will be possible, especially if we get any kind of funding. I'm working on nothing. I've been working on nothing for 10 years. That's because I had a little bit of a burnout, right? Because I was coding at home and coding at work. I was coding before I had code jobs. So yeah, I'm just obsessed with this particular architecture because, as you should see from the current explosion of AI programming, which I've been anticipating with this architecture for 20 years now, that this kind of approach, this abstracted generalized Git approach, is the absolute future of working and collaborating with humans and with models. But so that gets more into, and maybe it's a good transition to, although I wanted to say hello. Say hello to the YouTube audience, Bart. So I asked him if he would be all right with me, saying hello to him during the video. He said it was okay. Okay, it scrolled down. Hello, YouTube audience. I am Bartholomew, and I am here to help Bill with his IbGib videos. I hope you find them informative and engaging. Don't forget to bring your own Gemini API key to start a project. There we go. That's smart, Bart. Tell him it's BYOK. So, very neat. Oh, you've noticed a little robot emoji there. Okay, so going back to our bullets that we did, the distal section, right? I've already done a little bit. It's hard for me not to go to long term, but the first one was the microphone gripe, right? And, people were saying, oh, you need a microphone. It's like, well, again, we're thousands and thousands, $10,000s of dollars into debt, right? Had zero funding from this. It's okay. I probably wasn't ready for more funding before now. But so just $5 is a huge amount of money. If you're not thinking that $5 is a huge amount of money, which is actually understandable nowadays after the recent inflation spike, but it just goes to show you that maybe your computer approach is not on the lean side, right? And what I want is people desperate every day want to chew their arm off for stuff that works. And the stuff right now does not work. The stuff right now does not work. It is too complicated. We've reached a complexity issue. They're saying that LLMs are plateauing. No. Well, they are. I mean, that's obvious. Yes, they are hitting a plateau. But the issue is that we are using human-only paradigms with Git as our mindset, files and folders as our mindset. We're hitting the technical debt of these things. You think, oh, technical debt, oh, take over Git. I had one who's a very successful friend say, oh, I can't believe you're going after Git. I'm not going after anything. I'm just used to understanding the technical debt that we've hit, and that in order to progress, we need to address the complexity, the exploding complexity that occurs with our current approach to architecture. And so you got to stop thinking of Git and trying to have these reproducible rehydrate only approaches. It is very useful to have rehydrate. I'm not saying Git's going away, but we can have a more powerful approach to thinking of not just the agents, not just our data, but each one of these things as being this projection in time. And so what we're really dealing with is when we're dealing with prompting, right? When you prompt, you want to have like certain things, you have to re-up on your domain, right? Whenever I talked about this code base, I've had many times where I'd have to re-up the agent, or at first it was just the model, on all these different, what are the founding interfaces? What's this project about? And so I'd spend all this time, onboarding the agent. But that's because we're using old paradigms. What we should be doing is forking the agents, just like we're forking the data. And so this protocol now enables us to do very interesting biological-like things with our data and with our agents. So you can think of the agents as data also. our derivative data, and it gives content addressing to each one of the pieces, each one of the timelines. There are ways to sort of like git squash, right? So you can think of git as like a stop frame. I have a movie, and instead of thinking of the movie, you can think of it as frame by frame. And that's what git is doing, right? But now we're getting into vibe coding. Now we're getting into these timelines. And so we've got to have a different protocol that enables timelines. So what does that have to do with the microphone? Well, one of the other problems, one of the other issues that this is supposed to, or that this can address, is open source compensation. Right now, we're thinking of open source, and we're thinking of, some people are thinking of open data. There's a very good project that used to be called Solid Pod. It's the Tim Berners-Lee approach. There's also IPFS. Those are the only two that I know of that are remotely similar to this in architecture. But the point is that you got to start thinking of a data-centric approach. And this is a way to unify that data-centric approach. And so you should be able to like GoFundMe to individual pieces. What if you combined GitHub and GoFundMe, right? What if you combined your feedback section, your feature requests, your issue tracker, your bug tracker with your monetary compensation? Why do these things not exist? Because Git is the most successful software in existence. It has 95 plus market share. It has 100% mind share. Unless you're a game programmer, then you use Perforce. But it is so successful, but it's hitting its technical debt limits. We need to be able to unify these things, and we can. But it takes a different approach, a different understanding, and you have to focus on time. And then here, oh, here's the other thing that I wanted to mention there. So if we go over here to the Web 1, by the way, persistence here, this is what I've been working on recently. My brain works so slowly now. It took so long to code this, just ridiculous. But you know, when you got 3 indoor cats, 2 outdoor cats, 2 dogs, and 2 chickens, and 1 woman to keep happy, it's fries your brain, I guess. Can't even afford flea medicine. So annoying, so distracting. We could be making so much money, creating value. But about that, I can't remember where I put it. Let's see here. How to fund, how to invest in IbGib. So if you go over here to funding on the under the Web 1 tab, what has to happen is the protocol itself has to be an open nonprofit. And I don't mean a nonprofit like OpenAI. I mean a genuinely nonprofit where you understand what you're doing. And I'll be the CEO of that. But I will work, where is it? Oh, transparent finances, 100% open source. It's not going to be open, 100% open data. I mean, eventually you have to keep secrets, right? Which there's other interesting things as far as that goes, encryption and that sort of thing with IbGib related stuff. But anyway, so you have the nonprofit. And that's probably where I would do most of my work because the protocol is where I probably have the most value. But I'm not hating on people that want to have profit. That's fine. I love that. That's great. What did I say about Git? Git's ability to interact between open spaces and private spaces. The protocol enables that. And that's totally what IbGib is about also. It's about sharing data from space to space, right? But for profit, these are some of the use cases, version control, hardware specs, other specs. Because you can associate code with metadata at such a low level, it enables a completely different, a supercharged on steroids thing. And the slowness of the technical debt can be overcome with the fastness of the AI. You can start thinking of now you have an AI team and you want to have two teams compete for something. A/B sort of like A/B testing, sort of like a genetic algorithm or a Darwinian evolutionary algorithm. And for profits, I'll work at your lowest salary employee. You got, low level developers, yeah, QA people, testing, you have people that maintain, the sanitary offices, right? It's got to be entirely incentive and performance based. This is not like a, oh, fuzzy, oh, we want to feel good altruistic. This is to make the most value. I want the greediest people to contact me, but you have to understand part of your greed has to be self-limitation, just like how America came about. America came about because they had kings and then they brought it back just a little bit. And it's like, well, the question is, would you rather be the king of wherever or a president in the United States or even a corporation, a president of a corporation? I'd rather be president of a corporation, making a lot of money, but not just money, making a lot of value. The money is the metric. We don't chase the metric. This is a very important point. Everyone's talking about UBI. You understand? Once you change to a lowest salary rate possible, right? You can think of that as like in a neurological system. That's the bias. You don't have UBI as like, oh, we're helping these people out. You have a low, very much like waiters and waitresses, right, or servers. You have the bias, and then you have the spikes when they're successful. That's how seed investing, in my understanding, that's how seed investing is supposed to be working, right? You're providing environments, you're providing spaces, you're actually providing space times in our universe, but however you want to phrase it. And some of those things are hitting. And so that is part of the restructure of how we would be restructuring companies, our companies. Not necessarily DAOs, because what happens with a DAO, a DAO, a digital authoritative organization, whatever, I can't remember what it is, but autonomous organization maybe, or a decentralized or distributed autonomous organization. Look, I'm terrible with memory, right? Terrible memory. But the problem that happens there is that you end up becoming, you live under the umbrella of a bureaucracy. And I'm just not a bureaucracy person. I want people to have sovereignty with their space of where they want to take ownership of something. And I've created a protocol that enables, just like I was talking about the project, and then you have the piece that becomes the project, and that piece can, become its own project. We can do the same thing with this protocol. All of this ties down back to the protocol. So, and here's a couple of the use cases that I personally interested in. This was the driving one that I was talking about, lifelong learning across all domains. Very, very interested in that. So let's go back. Let's wrap this up. It's been an hour. You still with me? Where were we here? YouTube. We're already on next video. So we've gone through the cool theming thing, right? Now with this, I mean, that's really one of the easier ones that other people are going to be able to implement. The way we implement it is going to be interesting because each one of these themes, we can think of it as a projection. Each one of these conversations, again, it's like a project. And you can start thinking of downstream projects as being artifacts. So those are artifacts. One of the artifacts could be, here is a theme project, a theme package. But for us, we have natural embedded part of the protocol content addressing and integrity. Excuse me. So instead of having more code, more surface area for things to fall apart, to try to lock it down, we have our one mechanism that we're using in order to that we know that we bulletproof in order to maintain integrity. Right? We don't need separate stuff in order to sign or have signatures. This is the durability that Bitcoin has. Although proof of work, I'm not a big fan of, but it has its place. In the very near future, you know, I don't know if they'll be agile enough. I assume they will be for the quantum stuff, post-quantum security. But so, and that reminds me, IbGib is not a token. We can build token like architectures on top of it. You can build, there will be a consensus, varying consensus implementations for synchronization and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I prefer the sovereignty where you can approve or override as a sovereign individual or entity. But so we'll see how, I assume, I mean, there's just so many smart people doing so many smart things. I'm assuming they're going to handle the post-quantum just fine. But so this theming, we create these downstream entities. But also you can think of each one of these themes as being like a GitHub repo, right? To where others can fork your theme and that sort of thing. But this is just one example of a dynamic UI that's going to be generated. And now one of the problems that people have with dynamic UIs is, oh, well, how do we have a consistent UI? Well, the dynamic UI that's created, you can think of it as its own repo. And so now you have these dynamically created UIs created by these dynamically created agentic architectures, which, by the way, this will enable the AlphaZero equivalent of LangGraph, right? LangGraph is kind of like supervised learning. We're talking about the ability for more complicated workflows, more dynamic workflows. But you'll still be able to compartmentalize it as needed for security and that sort of thing. More than current approaches, because current approaches rely on a ridiculously large surface area, just like the Roman border did. And that didn't turn out too well for the Romans eventually. But so you have dynamic production of UIs, but they end up being artifacts that you can share among spaces, among other space times. So it's kind of like the Matrix, where we're going to upload, you know, all of this, all these guns, you know, and all this stuff. It's the same thing, only we're going to be using analysis of these DNA. These are our CRDT. They're very much like a CRDT, one of the CRDT mechanisms, only it's more powerful in my estimation, in my opinion. I'd get into that another time. Right? But so we can share these projections. It's all about sharing projections among spacetimes. And so you get the benefits of the dynamic UI, but you get the benefits also of the ratcheting mechanism when a dynamic UI works. Gotta wrap it up here. Wrap it up. Gee, what the hell am I doing? Brief summary of the video. Okay. Requirements. Gotta have that your own Gemini key for now. We went over the theming demo. You basically talk to your agent, the website agent, right? You have to be on one of these pages to have the website agent active. Look at the color, blue, web 1, blue. And you just talk to the agent. And then when you reload, watch this. We reload, it'll go back to the default. That's because I haven't persisted it yet. We have a different web 1 context. Look, it's red, or this orange, burnt orange thing. Hi again. Load up the neon theme. Right? So instead of coding all the UI that would be needed for me to do that, I just tell the agent. I say, agent, load this thing. And he loads it. Does he load the right one? I don't know. It looks like the right one. Later on is where we have the artifacts and that sort of thing. But for right now, that's encoded in his context window. Everything's awesome, right? Okay, so we've got the neon theme going. We'll go back here to the, yeah. This remembers, you know, which tab we're on. That's why it keeps going back to this one. That persistence, boy, I go so slowly now. I'm an old man. We're going over this theming projects. The project is a little limited right now. I'm able to work through warts and that sort of thing because I understand what the functions that are available. You can ask them what functions are available and that sort of thing. But I get to show you that, you know, I should have taken a video of me actually making this, but I had this shitty laptop, pardon my French. And yeah, takes it a while. So, well, if it didn't take it too long, I'm just saying it's already strains it, and who knows. Create a new project, editing. Oh, we didn't ask them to edit the description, name stuff. You can. It's I showed you that adding the texts. I showed you just copy and paste the address using the raw. But really, I'm not really expecting any of y'all to use this other than to just play around with the theming. You can play around with the projects. It's useful for me. We address the comments related to our ethos, our philosophy. I don't use the P word, but that was written by the Bart. Fair wages and transparency. Themes related to dynamic UIs. That's going to be huge. Brief summary of the video. Call to action. Bring your own key. Start a project. Contact us for more information or to contribute. Yeah, go to contact in the web 1. Contact. Email me, Bill Rayford. Caveat, pre-alpha, very early days, things can change. Very soon I'll be implementing, I've already implemented another prototype, the ability to download an entire dependency graph. That's one of the great things about this, is that you have a concrete dependency graph that you can use to send projections from one space to another. You just say get dependency graph, send it to it. One of the interesting things is if they already have some of the IbGibs, if you're sharing dependency graphs between two spaces, you end up that you don't need to send all of them. You only send the ones that they don't already have. And so that's similar to how Git works when it's pushing changes, right? So when you do a Git push or whatever, it doesn't send your whole repo and your whole repo's history every time. It only sends the new nodes added to your graph. Well, that's the same thing here, only our graph has both the content and the metadata content. Huge, huge possibilities there. With a more formalized way of parsing out, if you have this enormous graph, it's one of the problems with Git, is if you have this enormous graph, how do you just pull down one piece of it? It's like, well, no, you can't just do one piece of it. You should already make your Git repos small. Okay, that's not really a solution. But, you know, whatever. Contact us. That's it. Right? An hour and 14 minutes. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Hopefully the mic didn't suck as much this time, right? If it did, I'm sure you'll let me know, right? All right. So, join me. Thanks for watching.